we still in biomimetic. This is more thorough investigation, and it will be focused on how to move from biology to engineering. And before we go to deep into our course, let's see some video.
In 1989, Japan's Shinkansen bullet train had a problem. It was fast, really fast, like pushing 170 miles per hour fast. But every time it exited a tunnel, it was loud.
This is what I
The noise
told
was
you
coming from
yesterday.
a variety of sources, but whenever a train sped into a tunnel, it pushed waves of atmospheric pressure through the other end. The air exited tunnels with a sonic boom that could be heard 400 meters away. In dense residential areas, that was a huge problem. So an engineering team was brought in to design a quieter, faster, and more efficient train. And they had one secret weapon. Eiji Nakatsu, the general manager of the technical development department, was a bird watcher.
Different components of the redesigned bullet train were based on different birds. Owls inspired the pantograph. That's the rig that connects the train to the electric wires above. Nakatsu modeled the redesign after their feathers, reducing noise by using the same serrations and curvature that allow them to silently swoop down to catch prey. The Adelie penguin, whose smooth body allows it to swim and slide effortlessly, inspired the pantograph's supporting shaft, redesigned for lower wind resistance. And perhaps most notable of all was the kingfisher.
The kingfisher is a bird that dives into water to catch its prey. The unique shape of its beak allows it to do that while barely making a splash. Nakatsu took that shape to the design table. The team shot bullets shaped like different train nose models down a pipe to measure pressure waves and dropped them into water to measure the splash size. The quietest nose design was the one modeled most closely after the kingfisher's beak. When the redesign debuted in 1997, it was 10% faster, used 15% less electricity, and stayed under the 70 decibel noise limit in residential areas. And it did all that with the wings of an owl, the belly of a penguin, and the nose of a kingfisher. There's a name for design like this. It's called biomimicry.
The people who design our world usually never take a biology class, believe it or not. So they're novices in how the world works.
That's Janine Benyus. Back in 1997, she wrote the book that coined the term biomimicry. It told the story of the innovations in computing, energy, and health that were inspired by structures in the natural world.
Stick like a gecko, compute like a cell, even run a business like a redwood forest.
Benyus has since worked as a consultant for various companies, trying to get them to understand how to take design ideas from nature. That might mean studying prairie dog burrows to build better air ventilation systems, mimicking shark skin to create bacteria-resistant plastic surfaces for hospitals, or arranging wind turbines in the same drag-reducing pattern that schools of fish swim in. Designers get inspiration from a lot of different places, but Benyus thinks many of them could benefit from looking more at the natural world.
So there's a lot of sort of looking at what other people have done, and what they do is they look at all the others, and they get ideas. They literally do, a lot of designers have lots of magazines that they look through, they tear those out, they put them on inspiration boards. But they're looking at other human technologies.
Her idea was simple. Designers should get in the habit of bringing a biologist to the table and let them help solve problems by mimicking nature. And there are three main ways they can do that.
You can mimic its form or its shape. You might create a paint for a building that when it dries, it's got the same structure as self-cleaning leaves. Lotus leaves are notoriously great. They let rainwater clean the leaf because they have these bumps. The rainwater balls up on the bumps and then it pearls away the dirt. So that lotus effect is physical. And you can You can create a physical structure on the outside of any product. Imagine that on the outside of your car, rainwater in your car. So that's mimicking form. But there's also mimicking process, the processes in the natural world. It might even be, how you mimic how ants communicate in order to efficiently find sources of food or new places to live. And those processes, that self-organization, has been mimicked in software. In things like autonomous cars and how they're going to move in flocks through the city by talking to one another. That's mimicking nature's process. And then you jump up to the level of mimicking whole ecosystems, right? There's a thing that's a buzzword right now that's really hot called the circular economy, which is essentially, industry saying, there should be no such thing as a byproduct in our manufacturing facility that goes to landfill. It should be used by something else, right? And at the end of a product's life, that product should be upcycled into something else. It's being called the circular economy. Ecosystems do that really, really, really well. You've got a log on the forest floor, and those materials move up into the body of the fungus that eats it. Those materials move up into a mouse. And that mouse material moves up into a hog, right? And if you think about that as what we'd like to do with local materials being upcycled constantly in our cities, for instance, those ecosystem lessons are really big for us.
And that's the end goal for biomimetic.
I think we can stop the video. Before we watch the second video, let's go for let me. So let me give you some a little bit more in depth. It's still the intro, but it's more in depth. Okay. So from biology to engineering, there are some keywords from the video, the first video. Okay. The last part, the lady mentioned how to mimic the form or structures, and then the process, and also I think she didn't mention the function, but the third one is the function. We will go deep for that aspect. So first, because biomimetic material is study and imitation of nature's methods, mechanisms, process for design and engineering of materials. So to connect the biology part into the material science or any engineering fields, you need at least have three basic fields or concepts that you need to at least you get a sense of logic of that. Like a physics and chemistry, because every living things or every non-living things based on a small structure called atom, right? And it can be formed and arranged in any order, right? And it has a physical phenomenon, and you need to learn that. And also biology, learn the natural materials, how they work, how they form, okay? Because you see, if for example, like maybe this is metals, right? Metals form from an element of metals, right? Like they arrange and then they form in a bulk material. But how biology forms, like from cells and then tissue, organs, and then living organism. In biology, we have a hierarchy. In different layer, there's really different or distinguished property, like living things. If you are trying to grow cells in the lab, it is alive, but does it have like a brain? Like can it process like thinking process? No, right? It needs more complex than that. But if you are looking at tissue or maybe like your heart, it will beat, right? Can you control your heartbeat? No, right? it's unconscious, right? It's not conscious like our muscle skeleton, right? That's the difference between biology and non-biology. Biology, it has like a programming in each layer, like a programming in each layer, and they are work based on that program, or you can say DNA, okay, that information. So to bridging this concept, you at least understand these three concepts. Okay? And then in more details in the right side, you see material science, biology, chemistry, nanotechnology, and physics. It's all forming material science. So why nanotechnology? Because we need nanotechnology to get or to synthesize our materials that we want to form to mimic the nature. Okay, that's one how to fabricate. Okay, because nanotechnology. Actually, the first nanotechnology product or how to fabricate nanotechnology is to form, like you have a bulk material, and then you can cut it down, right? You can cut maybe until near nanoscale. That's one technology. The early technology of nano. We call it top-down process. So from the bulk material, and you cut down to pieces. But there's another technology we call bottom-up. So we synthesize, let's say we synthesize from molecular, and then we can design an assembly layer, maybe layer by layer, or maybe part by part, but from the bottom. Biology is from bottom. From cells, it's grow, tissue, organ, etc. Okay? So that part also we learn from nature, bottom-up process. Usually the bottom-up process is easier because you don't need like high-level energy or high-level temperature. Because you can do it in ambient temperature, and you just need only chemical and imagination. Boom, nanomaterial. But the early technology, you need to like how to design a chip or like a silicon wafer for your smartphone. Okay? You need at least a process called lithography. So you have a laser, and you design the material through that laser. Like the laser will etch and make some like some form or some structure, like a roughness. They can control the roughness until maybe a micro scale. It can do it, but it has limitations. It cannot go deeper like into nano directly. We still have limited resources. Okay. So yeah, that's the idea. Okay, why we need the nanotechnology to synthesize the material. Okay, and then the next part is the aspects of biomimetic material science and engineering. Okay? So we are considered the nature as our model of measure and mentor in two ways. First is structure. Okay? We mimic the structure or form, like the physical form of the nature. And then the second, we mimic the process, okay? Like the lady before said. Okay? So structure, for example, this is the prototype from our nature. We are mimicking, oh, this is so strong and tough. Oh, that's the structure. And then we identify the process, how the toughness achieved in this material. We identify, and then it also can do biomineralization. Okay? And we identify how they biomineralize the protein, and how we, at the end, we can achieve eco-friendly material process. Okay? And here we can achieve super tough ceramics. Okay? So that's the two aspects. Okay, how we learn from nature, and then the second, why? Okay? Why we are using the biomimetic? Why the technology going to that way. Current technology is already enough, is already super, you already sufficient with your daily lab, etc. But maybe in the future, or maybe in the near future, the resources is getting depleted, like the synthetic resources especially, it is really limited. Okay? It's based on carbon, and carbon is found in usually oil, right? And crude oil is maybe it's not unlimited, so we need to think another way to do it. And then also the challenge, okay? Because maybe we, like for example, our technology maybe it has go further, but maybe it gets stuck in development, and how we get to go through it, okay, overcome the obstacles. One idea is to develop this biomimetic. Okay? So aside from we are overcome the limited resources, we overcome the technological challenge, and the biological materials have remarkable properties. So that's why this is like a current trend nowadays. Okay? And then what is the difference with the traditional engineering? So we have biomimetic, we have traditional engineering. So the difference, okay, this is biomimetic, okay. The structures, if we see only the structures, like I said before, biology or biological material, it has a hierarchy, okay. In every layer, in every level, it has distinct property, okay? And then it has multifunctionality. I think the video yesterday, it is telling you that. And also self-healing capability. Okay, most high degree level of living organism, it has self-healing, right? Including human. Okay, okay. Although human is somewhat, it's self-healing, but it needs some period of time. And like a small lizard, right? If you cut, and it is really fast, and it depends on its. I read somewhere, I think it depends on some information in their DNA, the difference in that. Or maybe we can translate that DNA into human. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, self-healing, and then evolution, meaning the result of the structure is a result of a long period of time of evolution. And then environmental constraints. Okay. So we can see the elements composed in the biological materials. And then this is the structures, and then the other one is the processing. Okay. So most biosystem or biological material assemble from bottom up. Okay, not top down. I've explained before. And then you can synthesize in ambient temperature and pressure. So you can do it in a lab. Okay? You don't need really high energy or high temperature or high pressure. And then macromolecular mediated process. Okay? So most process in biology involve macromolecules as a template, a transporter, and catalyst for either for guiding, catalyze, nucleation. You see how the muscles, when it contract, it doesn't really easy, right? If to process, you have the information inside. When we need energy, your body needs to know which part need energy, which part doesn't, and it is happening like in millisecond, right? Really fast. And then, if we compare, okay, based on the chemical composition, the formation or fabrication, processing, microstructure, function, and criteria for design, and failure prevention, okay, you see the biological materials, mostly earth, abundant element. maybe in some engineering materials has limited resource in rare elements, and mostly that's the element of some metals, right? And then growth genetically guided, and the engineering materials usually from melts, powders. It involves temperature, high pressure, okay? And maybe strong acid-base chemical reactions. And the microstructure, it has hierarchical, and mostly microstructure at single length scale. Okay? And functions, adaptation of form and structure to the function, it has multifunctionality. For engineering materials, usually it has only one function. Okay? So different materials, different functions. And design criteria, it can adapt to environment. Okay? And in traditional engineering, usually like in steel, metals, usually it has a safety factor. The safety factor. Safety factor. So if your chair or maybe table, it has some limit for the strength, like tensile strength, how many megapascal the table or chair has limit, like if they are reaching that, the ultimate tensile strength will be failure. Right? So safety factor, before reaching some point, safety factor, I don't remember the number, but I think two-thirds of the total strength should be. So when you take the elevator, usually maximum weight, right? That's the safety factor. The total weight that you can go. It's not the maximum weight that it can hold, but it is safe to be using the elevator. If you're using the maximum, the tensile strength right away directly, then if you go like maybe after some cycles, it will be broken down. So it's to make the usage of the elevator longer, for example. And it is also in every device or any maybe buildings that hold some applied force. And the failure prevention, it has self-healing. Maybe in engineering materials traditional, it has sometimes maintenance like component replacement, etc. Biodegradable materials or non-biodegradable. Sometimes it can be gone because it is already composed to earth, etc. So that's a little bit difference between the biological material and engineering materials. So let me go back. So we have discussed the aspect of biomimetic, why using biomimetic, and then this is the last part, the strategy and approach. Okay. So all process in biomimetic engineering materials, it did not result from just observation alone to the nature, but it is require investigation, okay, deep investigation, thorough investigation of structure property. Okay. Remember, okay, in every aspect in material science, whether you are mechanical engineer or civil or maybe chemical engineer, in material science you will always study the structure property relationship. In more complete way, structure, property, process, and performance. Okay. You change the structure, you change the property. And how to change the property, you need the process. And all together, it will enhance the performance. So 4 aspects in material science. Okay. And also in every field, you need to always remember that, because you can engineer anything, you cannot engineer anything without material, right? You need material. So at least you need to know what material you are going to use, right? Either you are mechanical, civil construction, chemical, you need to know the materials. Okay? So at least you know a slight idea of structure property relations. Also in biological materials, we got also materials. You need to study that relationship, and then study to apply this relationship to the technology or engineering. Okay. We go for classification. Okay. We have structural materials, we have function materials, and then we have process. Okay. So structural materials, it's related to transmit or support force. Okay. How they can withhold the applied force or maybe weight. Okay. Function materials, it display some physical property and functions of their own. So it can be for optical property based on stimuli responsive, our smart materials, okay? Self-cleaning catalytic process, okay? Maybe in some chemical reaction, and tissue engineering. Okay? So it's based on the function. And the process is based on the material processing, okay? Like how to mineralize the protein. And then we go for typical biomimetic materials. So if you see table is quite a lot. This is some examples. A prototype. So first, see the materials. Okay, you have structure, functional, and process. Right? We have the functions. For structure, we can think of how strength, how tough the material, the hardness, wear resistance, impact, adaptive. Those three, the first one is kind of hard to distinguish, but if you are looking for definition, okay. Strength is when you are giving some pressure or force. If your material is broken, then that is your ultimate strength or tensile strength. Toughness, if you can make some curve from that applied force, and then how the materials can maybe have some strain, the area under curve is the toughness. That's the engineering definition of the toughness. Hardness. If you have material and you scratch with something and you can get some scratch, then it is the hardness. So it's only like a few thick of layer at the surface. That's hardness. Different from strength. Strength means whole block material. Hardness is only the surface. Impact means, so before, the strength, hardness, and toughness all observed in a slowly increasing force. Slowly. Impact, it has sudden force. And it is different in many materials, different behavior in many materials. So that's why it's different in property. So you can say strong, but which strong? It is the surface, whole block materials, or it can hold sudden impact, like if you imagine the car got an accident. It is impact. Adaptive, self-healing, friction, addition, I think you get the idea. Functional can have the stimuli responsive, self-cleaning, like in the lotus leaf or pickel feet, so they can attach. Photonics means it can change the color maybe to sense, maybe to reflect light. Catalysis for the process, maybe application for fuel cells, battery, and biomagnetic for material process is, you can see the biomagnetic protein and nuclearization, like formation of ceramic atom particles. Okay. So you can see here the materials, property or functions, and then you can have the prototype, the biology prototype, which animal or which nature you are observing, and then how we apply in some biomagnetic materials all these features can have good property in our biomagnetic materials, and then what is the applications? Okay. I think it's not really difficult, right? Okay. So the idea is just to see the which property from the nature, and then we can translate that property into our design or our idea, and then we can fabricate the device or materials. So that is the classification, and then the general approach. Okay, so I think you get the idea from the table. So I just mentioning the idea. So first, we can see 4 steps. Okay, find the property in nature, study the microstructure, and design the microstructure, and then fabricate. That's only 4. Okay? We can see later. And this is 2 process in which I will explain later on. First is this is the shell from the abalone. You know abalone? Yeah. You can open and eat the inside, right? And this is the butterfly. So abalone, it is strong and quite hard. So we can take that as an example. And butterfly, it is displaying a good color property, and this is idea for display, electronic display. So we go for the first one. So first we need to identify high performance natural model. Okay? So we study structure and functions of biological system, and they are as our prototypes. So we need to find the prototypes if you want to design biomagnetic materials. So in identify, we also need to remember the structure performance function relationship, the multifunctionality, okay, from the nature. So it is not like random observing, but we need also to narrow our observation to what we need. And then the second one, this is we call the abstract key mechanisms, structures, and design principles. So this is after identify the nature, we then get the principles from that nature. So this is what I emphasize. Mimicking is not copying. Different. Mimic, learn, and then try to replicate, not directly copy. Okay? So we need to learn the intrinsic relationship. Not all the nature we need to copy, but we need to understand the principles first. Okay? So we need to understand how they work. Okay? So from natural materials, we need to find what the property they have and why they work like that, how we understood, okay? And then we can maybe find models for that nature. So it's not straightforward process because natural material always having a complex structure and it is hierarchical. So we need to do it in maybe really lot of observations. Okay? And after that, okay, we need to transfer and design the biomimetic material structures. After we get the principle and idea, for example, oh, this structure is strong because it has different behavior in the structure. Maybe the microstructures act differently. So after we get the principles, we then go for the material selection. If we want to design which materials we want to use, it can be natural, it can be synthetic, it can be both combinations. Okay. And then probably we have a simulation before we design. We have maybe modeling through some computers, maybe MATLAB simulations. Anyone using MATLAB? And then it is optimizing the system. Then the last part, we fabricate and implement the biomimetic materials. So after the 3 steps achieved, then we can fabricate. But yeah, we need to always remember that nature is always one step ahead. So we need to run faster if you want to get into that nature. And this is the example from the picture at the early slides. So abalone shell and butterfly. So see the abalone shell. So this is how they create the biomimetic ceramics or super ceramics. So first, we identify the abalone shell. Oh, it is composed of calcium carbonate, but the mineral itself is 1,000 times tougher than their compound. So you have like remarkable property in here. And then to go deeper, check the chemical composition and structure at micrometer scale, you get some characterizations. Okay, you get some characterizations. After you get the characterization, after you understand how the structure property makes the performance of all this shell, okay, and make increasing the performance, and then this allow the scientists to form a basic for design. And then after maybe some design, some prototyping, and then you get the biomimetic ceramics. But it's not always straightforward. But this is just an example of how 1, 2, 3, 4 process going through. And then the other example is the structural color butterfly. So this is the butterfly. So it has a brilliant color, right? So usually they are using it for communications, long-range communication, and then identify and get the principles that the color is from the microstructure, okay? For the interspatial distance in the microstructure. So by a various design of the interspatial distance of light interacting layers, we can change colors rapidly. So from this design, we can create high-performance electronic color displays. So we use this design from the butterfly, how we have the create the interspatial distance, and we can vary, change them over time, and colors will change rapidly. And then that's for general approach. This is special approach. There's a lot of words here, but the idea is step 1 and 2 maybe it's related to biomaterials. Maybe some biologists and some material scientists can come together. The biologists maybe they learn from nature and then the idea here. But the one who does the characterization is the material science. So, can you analyze this? And then they got the data, they go to fabrications, step 3, design and fabrications. But this if we don't have any good system to learn from nature, maybe we will take the development really slow. So the idea, so it is a little bit unexplored path. So if you have a large database, contain all the biology component and how they are works and how they are made from, how the structure, property, etc. If we have that database, it will enable the biologists and material scientists or maybe researchers in general to develop really fast. So maybe you can have computational method here, how many iterations you can have, any simulation. So this is also a good topics if you want to go for design and simulation route. I think in some chemical or maybe material science or even mechanical, they have design parts and they have the simulation parts. And this one that you can maybe take in the next years, or maybe you want to go for post-graduate. This is untouched until unexplored. Maybe some explored, but not in a really huge way. Okay. So we need to establish a system to which all know, like a biomimetic solution can be placed, classified in terms of function, and it is valuable for development of bioinspired materials and process. So we can verify the manufacturing process, the characterization, and it will lead to the iterative process between biology and engineering. That's how it works in a special approach. Okay? So, yeah. Because I think one of the trend in any engineering fields or in any technology or information fields, one research trend is the big data, and this can be a big data for its own. Yeah, the last part is actually a little bit off topic, but it shows you how modeling or simulations can help to understand the biology or biomimetic process. So this is the second video. Let me check. I think that's enough. So do you understand the point? This second video is a little bit complex and a little bit off topics, but the idea is in our biological materials, or for example our DNA, it has code, right? And if we understand that code, how they transmit the information, how they decide to make the action, the lady wants to learn all that information, okay, and use it to solve other problems as well. So it can help us to, so you can say that it's a big data. Okay? So from that method, our approach to find the biomimetic, it can be solved through that way. So we can simulate how to find, like, for example, how to treat the cancer, because cancer, it has many types, and also the medicine is also a lot, right? And which part is able to cure the cancer, and they need to find a pathway. So it's like how to go to understand our base of information, and then learn the pathway and find the mathematical solution, find the algorithm. I think if you go there's a course in the, I think in applied science, or yeah, in applied science or in biomedical, I forgot. But it is learning the protein and peptide. So you will use some software and you will try to learn like a playing puzzle. So you're trying to get which protein is this and how to make it longer and etc. And you learn about that protein. And it already have maybe millions pathway to design the protein and peptide, and you can download it in some website. You can type in the software. Yeah, basically that is most of your courses about. There's the course about the protein and peptide, but how you works in application is you are using some software. And if you are going to learn which one works, and we can make some simulation. And I think in the future, if you are interested to involve some simulation or computational method, I think that will be better. That will increase your skill and capability. Because if you are only learning, for example, only learning civil construction, and maybe mechanical or maybe material science or maybe chemistry, you will stop in that field. And I think if you go to many labs in mechanical and civil construction, all using simulation and all using computational method in computer, in some software design. So I think it's better to get in touch with some skills or some software. I'm just suggesting, because most of you are still bachelor, right? So you still have a lot to learn, and you have still a lot of time to learn. So we can get in touch with it. Because if you are waiting for this university to teach you, you won't get the time. You need to learn by yourself. The university maybe will give you the principles, theory, but how you work with it, you need to learn by yourself. That's it for the course. I almost saw all the homework. My notes for all of you. Some of you still make the homeworks too general. Self-healing. Okay, self-healing, but what? What is the material? What's the application? How it works? It's too general. Or maybe tissue engineering. Yeah, tissue engineering is topics, but what is it you want to point out? Maybe the materials, maybe applications. Okay, and some of you did a good job, like mentioning the materials, the solution, and how it works in a short way, and that's really good. It means you read the paper, you understand the paper, and you can make it in your own words. It doesn't mean that you need to make really comprehensive works. At least you mention the key points, like the topics, the materials, and then maybe what's the problem, and maybe what to improve. And maybe you can comment on your own, like your opinion about the materials. That's also good. I appreciate that. Okay, like maybe you comment like, oh, maybe this I want to blah 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 blah. That's really good. That's really good. Okay, and for the first homework, that's okay. For the second homework, I want you to go for that students who maybe make too general. The second homework, you need to be more specific. Find my suggestion. Find these related topics. It's not always the same topics, but maybe you can relate the first homework and your second homework, and then maybe you can have an idea for your final, okay, from that two homework, and maybe third later. But for the second homework, be more specific, and then be more comprehensive but short. Okay, comprehensive but short. I mean, you can take some key points, maybe put one picture like to describe all. It's also okay. Or no picture is also fine if you can point out the key points. That's also good. Okay. But I think most of you did good job, but a few too general to broad the topics. Okay, that's all for today. Next week we will go into the next section. Either start with manufacturing or maybe some classification based, not from all of this, but maybe a new classification for new smart materials. Or maybe you can just jump to recent trends for smart materials.
About the homework, we have to cite the article, right?
Yes.
And I just put the link. I don't know if I have to.
Yeah. Just link. It's okay. Just link. Link. Okay. I think this is all for today. Okay. See you next Tuesday.